So welcome back. We haven't done one of these video study guides in a long time, but I figure since we have a test coming up here soon, time is of the essence, and so maybe this will help you ace my test on this following week. So here we go. Study guide. Circulatory system. The solid living portion of blood is made up of what? Red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. What's the other part? Plasma. I hope you know that. So the non-living portion of the blood is the plasma. Remember, it's made up of primarily 90% water, and then it's got the straw color for the rest of it. Which type of blood cells? All right, so we're looking at them. Are the most numerous? That's red blood cells. Are the largest? White blood cells. Fight infection. White blood cells can move on their own. That's white blood cells. Remember, they can go into tissue itself. Initiate clotting. That's always going to be your platelets. Contain hemoglobin. Remember, red blood cells have hemoglobin. If you got heme, you got oxygen. Function in phagocytosis. Remember, white blood cells have their own locomotion, so they can move themselves into and out of tissue, and that's going to be your phagocytes. So white blood cells are those. Name the three types of proteins found in plasma. You got fibrinogen, albumin, and globulins. Which of the three proteins in plasma work with platelets in load clotting? That's fibrinogen. Antibodies are what type of proteins? That's serum globulins. Besides proteins, name three substances found in plasma. You got inorganic minerals, digested foods, and nitrogenous waste, of course, from your mitochondria and protein synthesis. Which are red blood cells? Where are red blood cells produced? Sorry. Red bone marrow, of course. What is the name of the pigment that holds oxygen? That's hemoglobin. Name the four types of blood. You got A, B, AB, and O. Of course, you can say that there's 8 types of blood. You can have an A positive or A negative, B positive, B negative, AB positive, AB negative, and O positive or O negative. But we just care about the 4 major types. Which blood type is the universal donor? That's going to be an O negative. Remember, it's blank blank, for lack of a better way. It doesn't have any A or any B proteins and doesn't have the RH factor as well, so it's going to be a negative. So moving on, which blood type is the universal recipient? AB positive. Remember, it doesn't produce any antibodies for anything, so it has everything on the surface, and thus it will never be attacked, no matter what type of blood you put in it. So differences in blood types are due to the presence of what? Antigen proteins. What is the function of antigens? Causes the formation of antibodies. So remember, you had the antigen protein on the side. It produces antibodies. What type of antigen is present in the blood type AB? It's antigen A and antigen B. So both are going to be located there. What causes agglutination? 2 different blood types combining. So if you have an A positive person combining with a B positive person, you'll have agglutination because the B positive person's blood that got transfused into the other person will be fought off by all the antibodies. What is the immediate result of agglutination? Of course, clotting. We just did that one. How many chambers in the human heart? There's 4 chambers. And we've got a right and left atrium, right and left ventricle. Which chamber pumps blood? That's the ventricles. Which chamber receives blood? That's your atriums. The right atrium receives it from the body. The left atrium receives it from the lungs. The right ventricle sends it to the lungs, and the left ventricle sends it to the body. So which one do you think is the biggest one? Left ventricle. Of course, it's going to be slightly bigger because they have to pump the blood to the rest of the body, where the lungs isn't very far away from the heart itself. For the right atrium, right ventricle to pump to. What prevents blood from flowing back into the right atrium when the right ventricle contracts? That's the right AV valve and the tricuspid valve. Where does blood go from the right ventricle after contraction? That's the pulmonary artery. Which chamber of the heart receives blood from the lungs? That's the left atrium. Which vessel carries blood back to the heart from the lungs? That's your pulmonary veins. So anything coming from the lungs or from any part are always going to be the veins, and what sends are the arteries. So from the heart, anything that sends is going to be arteries. Anything that is coming back into the heart is going to be your veins. The relative oxygen content of that blood is about 9 6%. Actually, it's about 96 to 100% capacity. Where does the blood go from left ventricle after contraction? Oh, by the way, our oxygen is about 21. Our air is about 21% oxygen, which is kind of cool that we can have this high of concentration in our own bloodstream from all that hemoglobin that we have. Where does blood go from the left ventricle after it contracts? That's to the body. Which chamber of the heart is the thickest? That's going to be your left ventricle. Vessels that carry blood away from the heart are called arteries, and vessels that carry blood towards the heart are called veins. What type of vessel have one-way valves to prevent backflow? That's veins. Which type of vessels have the thickest muscular lining? That's arteries. Which type of vessel is felt during a pulse reading? That's going to be arteries as well. Backside. Which vessel acts as the site of gas exchange? That's going to be your capillaries. Which type of vessels has the smallest diameter? Capillaries are 1 cell wide. Remember, only one red blood cell will make a differential. Red blood, RBCs. Which vessel is the thinnest wall? That's going to be your capillaries. That's where all the gas exchange occurs. Okay, so these are the type of circulation. We're getting into this. So supplies the heart itself. That's coronary circulation. Remember, coronary bypass and all those coronary arteries has to do with the heart itself. Picks up digested food and water. That's going to be renal and portal circulations. Filters waste from the blood. That's going to be your lymphatic or lymph. Exchanges carbon dioxide and oxygen. That's going to be your pulmonary. And supplies the body organs in general. That's the systematic circulation. Contraction of the ventricles is also called systolic or systematic circulation. Relaxation of the ventricle is called what? Diastole or diastolic. The blood pressure reading is the highest numbers. So typical blood pressure is 120/80. That's just typical average American. 120 is going to be your systolic. 80 is going to be your diastolic. Overproduction of white blood cells, that's going to be leukemia. You got anemia, which is the underproduction of red blood cells. And hypertension, which we looked at in our blood pressure lab. Hypertension is anything pretty much over 120/80. So if you got a blood pressure of 140/90 or higher than that, you should probably go get it checked out by your doctor. All right, so here's our heart diagram. We will look at this quite often. So you have the aorta up here at number 1. Then you have the superior vena cava at number 2. Number 3, you have the right pulmonary artery. Then you have at 4, you got these two pipes, which are the right pulmonary veins, which are what? Coming back to the heart itself. Then number 5, you have the right atrium. And then you have right here the tricuspid or right AV valve. And then you got the right ventricle itself. And then 8, you have the what? Inferior vena cava. This diagram, by the way, is exactly on the test, FYI. Number 9 is going to be your left pulmonary artery. Number 10, you got right here and here. That is going to be your left pulmonary veins. And then right here at 11, you're going to have your left atrium. Then you have your bicuspid left AV valve. Then you have your aortic semilunar valve right here at 13. Then you have your left ventricle, and on the bottom you have your aorta or artery. Hopefully that helped, and if you have any questions, make sure you stop by.